processes, analytics, and technology are they using to help convert insight into sound business decisions in today's era of big data, the Internet of Things, and data science? Who and what do they study, follow, and surround themselves with in order to stay inspired and make creative choices? Well, tonight we're going to go behind the scenes of what it's like in the day-to-day life of a buyer. Is it really as glamorous as the media has led us to believe? You will hear from our panel of buyers who are lucky enough to land one of the best jobs in the fashion industry, which allows high-level access to designers and creatives, as well as close interaction with brands and stores, all while being responsible for curating assortments that delight customers and drive sales. They are: Lauren is the omnibuyer for jewelry at Tory Burch. She was born, raised, and currently lives in New York City. Lauren has been a buyer at Tory Burch for 2 years and previously held buying roles at Balenciaga, Gilt.com, Louis Vuitton, and in product training at Hermès at Christian Dior. If that wasn't enough, Lauren has also had retail experience on the sales floor at Harry Bendel and various boutiques in Brooklyn. She is passionate about fashion, of course, food, art, traveling, her dog, and mentoring the future buyers of the world as a FIDM instructor. Sakinah, like Lauren, was born and raised in New York City, but she has been in Los Angeles for the past 11 years. She's a graduate of SUNY Onitawa and the Fashion Institute of Technology. Before becoming a buyer at Ross, Sakinah worked for Macy's.com and Rampage. She's been with Ross stores for 16 years now, and in fact, opened the West Coast lingerie division 11 years ago in their downtown LA office. A beauty buyer for the past 3 years, Sakinah is also an active volunteer with Project Angel Food, loves to explore and travel the world to different yoga retreats, and still finds the time and energy to be a part of the FIDM faculty. Matt is originally from Dallas, Texas, but made the move to Los Angeles to attend FIDM, so we have an alumnus on the panel with us. While at FIDM, Matt obtained his associates in merchandising and marketing and his bachelor's in business management. Upon completion, Matt worked for various retailers as a buyer and merchandiser, which includes companies like BCBG, Armani Exchange, and his current company, The North Face. At The North Face, Matt currently manages the buying for all of Canada, which includes both stores and e-commerce. Thank you to my panel of experts for joining me this evening. And because our topic is the art and the science of fashion buying, I'd like to break our conversation that way and then end with, how does one become a buyer? Hi, everybody. Hi. Welcome. Hi. Okay, so let's start today's conversation. So we're first going to talk about the art of buying and then the science of buying, and then how do we become a buyer? So the first question that I want to ask you is all about the art of buying. How do you forecast trends and know what to buy? Who wants to take the first question?
I can take that on.
Yeah.
I think all of us buyers really definitely do use fashion trend services, whether they're external or internal. We at Ross have a fashion office that we rely on to give us trends seasonally as well. And in this new digital world, social media is a huge focus to figure out what is trending. Instagram, bloggers, Facebook, TikTok, and also looking at brands' social medias as well as their websites can give you a lot of insight to trends. And one thing for us at Ross, our customer tells us what's trending as well. She tells us in what she's buying, is it trending? Does she like it? And what she's not buying also does give us a little bit of an indication of where the trend is going as well.
I love that you said that. It's not just about who is shopping in your store, but who is walking in and then walking out because we didn't have anything for him or her, right? Yes,
Exactly.
very, very insightful. And I really love that you also mentioned social media. Would you say that social media has been a more significant source of trends than in previous years?
Absolutely. I see it when I go into any store. Their customers are looking at items, and then they're looking for them on social media and looking for them to see, okay, is this season? What price is being offered online? I think it's a huge part of the shopping experience, whether you're in store or, doing it from your couch and you're just at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Matt, do you have anything to add? Is social media a big part of trend research at the North Face?
Definitely. So I pretty much have weekly calls with our store managers. And the funny thing is we've really adapted to the way that consumers are coming into our stores. And so many times when we have something posted on Instagram, people will come into the stores and specifically point where is this style? We need this. So we've purposely done integrated kind of a product capture on all of our marketing emails to say what will be in store. On the actual Instagram post, we'll say located in all doors where you can find it, really incorporating it and using that because it's been such a huge play for us. And it's been almost a guarantee, if we're not selling something at the moment, put something on Instagram and a day later, or the sales will automatically just jump up automatically.
Wow.
But to Sakinah's point, trend forecasting is usually incorporated, thankfully, for most of the large retailers inside of the design, merchandising, or buying team. Usually some sort of packet or presentation is put together with the season that you're about to buy. So luckily, you already kind of have a prepackaged approach of saying, here's where the season was kind of inspired from, where the trends were taking everything from. And you do your own due diligence by Instagram, going on YouTube, looking and seeing what people are doing on the street. Just kind of a culmination of all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Lauren, what about you over at Tory Burch? Do you guys have kind of a forecast team that kind of you meet with on a regular basis to figure out what the trends are going to be for next season?
So similar to Matt, to be very transparent, a lot of that true trend research and that legwork is kind of done for us already as a buying team, and kind of funneled through the design team and the merchandising teams, because again, I'm at a mono brand, so everything is through that lens, through the brand DNA and through the image of the brand. So that's kind of already been through the the lens and the research of their trend forecasting once we see the line. But similar to Matthew and Sakinah, I'm using social media on the daily as a buyer. I'm reading industry news. I'm going into stores now that thankfully retail stores are mostly open again, and I'm using my own trend research, getting out into the field and utilizing social media to when I see the product to assort to where I see the based backed by analytics, of course, but funneling it through the lens of where I see the consumer on the trend cycle, and say, and I can say, okay, the design team really nailed it here with the trend, or, our customer's not ready for that. So that's where, my own kind of trend research comes into play in my work.
So it's not just receiving the information from your trending, but it's really like a back and forth collaboration.
Yeah, and filtering it almost in a way. So, and you're the expert of, your store network that you're buying for, or the website that you're buying for, and your customer, whether it's North America, or let's say you work for a European brand, and it's your own filter is actually your trend research in a way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I love that all three of you are kind of from different worlds and different product categories too. Speaking of trends, do you see any kind of major shifts that's happening in trends now that we're coming from, a very difficult 2020 for a lot of for pretty much all of us? Any major shifts in trends that any of you have have seen or are starting to see?
I can jump on that one real quick. It's been very apparent for the company that I'm with right now, and just to reiterate, I work for the North Face, and I think since everyone's been just cooped up inside for so long, we've had such an increase in anything outdoor related. Like our tents are going through the roof, anything sleeping bag related, camping, hiking, all of those outdoor activities just to get people outside of the house. We've seen a huge increase, and really didn't quite anticipate for that, because we often buy a year in advance, and by the time that COVID really happened, there's only so much you can do in terms of inventory cushion. But that was one of the areas, at least from my perspective, that's really picked off.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, as people starting to kind of leave their houses now, they need activewear and things to go out in, right?
My sweatpants have like shot straight down, and like hiking and camping have like shot straight up now.
Oh, I love that. Inside information. All right. What about you ladies? Any major shifts and trends that you noticed?
I can speak up to this. So, I'm coming from the lens. I'm currently the jewelry buyer at Tory Burch. So I'm, in my category lens here with jewelry. But the big trend is she was really going after statement necklaces and statement earrings. We're right now we're on a Zoom webinar. We're utilizing video calls and not so much worrying about bottoms down, but really like highlighting. The customer wants to highlight her face and accessorize and really spice up her look for the Zoom call. So not necessarily that casualization trend that we went through, but actually investing in like statement accessories to kind of spice up the video call. So that's been really interesting to see, and that's also really exciting for business as she's actually not price resistant. She's going for the higher statement price point. So that's been also interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard it referred to as like revenge shopping, like revenge against last year.
Definitely.
Uh-huh. And Sakinah, any major trends that you've seen in the beauty world?
Absolutely. To piggyback on what Lauren was saying about highlighting the face, definitely there was a little bit of a time where during the pandemic, certain beauty categories in makeup did downtrend, like lip wasn't as strong because people were wearing masks, but then mascara and eyeliner and eyeshadow really popped in sales because it was above the mask. It was categories we called above the mask that were definitely trending. And also on Zoom, because those features really pop when you're on a Zoom call, is your eyes, and then obviously lip and everything has started to come back with the world opening up. And another trend that kind of took off during the pandemic was self-care, which we see continuing as we go back into the real world. So, whether it's exfoliating your body or using, guashes and stone rollers, they're into taking care of themselves, which I think is a big theme that came out of the pandemic, is just self-care as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what you said about lipstick, because I've been wearing lipstick more recently, and I've had people say like, oh, compliment, like, oh, you have such, nice lipstick on today. I was like, wow, I haven't heard that in over a year. Right?
Exactly.
Because our faces have been covered up.
Yes.
So yeah, very, very, very insightful trend information. I read an article recently about, I think it was the New York Times, that at Rent the Runway, a lot of their sales were down in the last year because people weren't needing, occasion wear to rent to go to different events and things like that. So one way that they were trying to forecast what it was going to be like going forward, and I thought that was so genius, was they started looking at open table reservations to see what kind of reservations people were making. They were looking at flight bookings, hotel bookings, and also they were calling up different wedding venues to see how booked they were, to get an idea of what their business was going to be like. Is there anything that y'all do in your business that's kind of out of the box like that, to kind of like figure out, who's my customer? Well, what is he or she doing?
I can
Anything?
jump this again. I think going back to the calls, because I'm located in Colorado right now, but all of my business is in Canada. So I very rarely get to be on the actual floor or in the stores. Especially in the past year, I haven't been in a very long time. So I kind of rely on the managers, district managers to really let me know what's going on. And it's very interesting, having not been in the country of Canada and only interacting around the States here. You wouldn't really think there'd be too much of a difference, but there's quite a stark difference between the consumer and just the overall person that's living in both of these countries. When you compare like our traffic in stores, US is already starting to pick up. Canada is still kind of lagging and very slow, a little bit more cautious, which affects the plans that we're kind of planning for future seasons. how much ATS dollars that we have that we can buy in for the current season that we're in. So that's, I don't know if that's super unique, but like every Monday when I talk to the district manager and managers on phone calls just to see how business is, it's just, that's how I get my inside scoop of what's actually happening on the floor there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like firsthand information, right? And what about you two? Anything like that's out of the box or different that people that maybe it's regular to you, but maybe someone who isn't very familiar with buying would never assume that this is like one way that you get to know your customer, learn about your customer.
I think it's interesting coming from Ross and working in an environment where we carry so many different product groups. It's the collaboration piece and talking across with different divisions. Oh, you know, my sales are up, my sales are down. So home sales are down. Does that mean people are going out? They need more makeup. You know, like it's very interesting, all the different things that you can just kind of come to a conclusion just talking with your coworkers. And, you know, now that we're getting back into the office, you know, that water cooler chat, lunch chat, I think it'll be even more interesting to see how people are coming out of the pandemic and how it's affecting the different areas of the companies. And, you know, we're so nimble at Ross that, you know, if one area is down, we can shift money and, you know, move things around. That's the great part of off price, is that we can really go in and drive the sales in the categories that are trending.
I love it. Yeah, the interdepartmental kind of conversations, right? I think that's such a good example. I think that, you know, so many people who are not in buying may not realize how so many of these categories are interconnected, even though they may not sound interconnected. Another way that we kind of get our trends is, and Lauren, I would love for you to speak a little bit more about this, is I think a lot of people don't realize that fashion is interconnected with, you know, the economy, with politics, with current events, with history, right? And all of these things are connected. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, and again, we're it's interconnected. So, you know, it's like being on top of current events, and that being, you know, almost our trend research, our business research, and that, you know, how do we react and how do we impact our business with what's going on in the world. And again, I haven't had any like true creative ways of analyzing my business differently, but I think it's, you know, to Matt's point, maybe it's just staying really close to the store network. They're the ones that are, you know, on the sales floor, or at least closest to the clients. And, you know, one creative way that we were, you know, maintaining our business with our, you know, core customer base is, you know, the buying team was helping, at least, again, this is not a way of analyzing our business, but we were at least, you know, helping ship product actually to some client advisors' homes so they could do video client appointments from there. They were clienteling and selling from their home, you know. So it's, again, you know, that's incredible way to, you know, kind of maintain that client relationship, you know, obviously push sales, and then, you know, just taking into account, you know, the state of the world and the socioeconomic, you know, impact that, you know, we had to react, you know, we had to have our, you know, react with our business.
Okay, great. And on that note, you know, all of you kind of mentioned how important it is to kind of stay current, right? So what are some of the favorite things that you like to read to keep current? I'm assuming like, you know, Women's Wear Daily, etc.
For me, I guess it depends on what kind of news I'm taking in. In terms of like more news, which I mean definitely has a correlation into what we do in the business. Like podcast is a huge thing. So every morning I usually start with the NPR podcast, and it just gives you a little 15-minute breakdown of what's happening in the news. More fashion and retail related YouTube channels, it kind of goes back to like the trend forecasting. And one of the things I find the most helpful is there's a couple different YouTubers that will just go around the streets of these major cities and just show what people are wearing of the day. And usually it's those people on the streets that are setting these trends that usually make it up onto the runway and then kind of filter their way down. So podcasts for me, YouTube and Instagram, I think, which kind of already been mentioned, but with everything moving digital, all of that kind of kind of makes sense for what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Matthew also. I really like bloggers too, because a lot of bloggers I follow go into the stores and they're like, look what I got at, this retailer, that retailer. So it's very eye-opening to see what they're gravitating towards and what they're excited about. And these bloggers have millions of followers. So I think it's really insightful to stay on top of them also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else that we didn't mention that you think that, like, for someone who wants to be a buyer, they should definitely read?
You can read some books. There's great books out there. I personally, I love the history. There's so many brands out there. There's so many brands with rich history. You can read about the history of fashion, and that in itself, just reading literally a physical book or even a Kindle. There's so many great authors out there that are like fashion journalists. Dana Thomas is one of them. There's so many amazing books out there that you can just pick up and read and really educate yourself on the history of these brands and history of trends and the history of fashion itself. And you'll see how relevant that is today, and especially as a buyer, like this trend didn't just come from anywhere. Look back 20, 30, 40 years and you'll see something similar. So there's always amazing books out there to read as supplement to your podcast, YouTube, WWD, Business of Fashion, and all the other news sources that we're intaking.
Yeah, all great sources. Yes. Read a good old-fashioned book.
Yep.
You mentioned a little bit about like the history of brands. Let's talk a little bit about the DNA of your brands. What would you say is the DNA of your brand, and how does that influence your buying decisions?
I can elaborate a little bit more on that. So again, I'm at Tory Burch, and Tory Burch is a real person. She's living. She's a living designer, and she's very involved in the brand. So again, everything is coming from her lens and her childhood inspiration and how her vision. So she's working with the design team to always filter that through the upcoming line, the upcoming collection, from accessories to the ready to wear. So that is when you start as a buyer at one of these brands, that is kind of already, that platform is already there for you. And then you can dig into all the historical data and all the analytics, but everything is coming from her vision. It's really Tory Burch is really an American lifestyle brand. So it's wardrobing a woman from in her work life, in her day off, in her casual wear, in her active wear, in her accessories while she's on a Zoom call, her everyday shoe, her evening shoe. It's really, an American lifestyle brand, and you're wardrobing her from head to toe. And she loves a logo, of course, because Tory logo is on most of our products. So, that's really kind of the lens that I'm filtering when I'm creating my assortment, when I'm picking which product that's going to be in stores, that's going to be online. I'm, filtering it through that. Okay, what does this woman want to wear every day? What is she wearing, in her work meeting? And, what color does she want this to see the logo in, this season? So that's kind of, always in the back of my head, and it's almost, ingrained in, ultimately when you're in market and you're seeing the new collection, it's already, it's part of you, you're already filtered through that lens. And, then there's obviously the science to back you up on it.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Based off of those pictures, Lauren, it looks like you're buying the right things.
Yeah. Definitely.
I'll go ahead and jump into mine. The North Face started back in the 60s and 70s, and that's kind of where it really started. Out in Berkeley, so San Francisco, kind of where we got the logo that you'll see on most of our tees, the half dome in Yosemite. The DNA of the brand really kind of encompasses the outdoor lifestyle. We really, some of the activities that kind of started with were summiting, climbing, mountaineering, snow sports, And it's kind of just branched out from there. So now we kind of go into hiking, trail running. And I think the most recent expression of the brand has really kind of what you kind of see right here, this what we kind of label as urban exploration. So the city dweller that lives in a major city, the young 20 to 30-year-olds that like the idea of adventuring and going out, but maybe aren't climbing a mountain per se. And this is their way of kind of getting into it. I think one of the pieces that we have is the Nupsy, which has recently kind of blown up across a lot of blogs and website and trend places. It's those colorful ones that you can see in the back corner over there. So the brand's kind of evolved in terms of like adapting to its customer, which is one of the trickier things that a brand can do, is staying true to your DNA, but yet at the same time adapting to new generations that are popping up and making sure you're adapting. And that's one of the key aspects of a buying job, to be honest, is making sure you're being true to that customer where your brand started way back when, but also making sure like, okay, Gen Z and millennials are coming up and they're a huge buying power now. You gotta cater to some of those needs where some of these new branches are starting to pop up for us.
Such a good point. Yeah. Maintaining your, your loyalty to the DNA, but always thinking about your customer who is constantly evolving. Yeah, definitely.
I think if you look out on the landscape where most of these companies that go bankrupt or fail, it's they try and change who they are and lose that DNA, and they lose their core customer as a result.
And speaking of core customer, the Ross core customer is approximately 70% female, shopping for herself and her family. And she comes from a wide range of incomes and age groups as well, like anywhere 18 to 54 is like, our core there. And our customer, she's a mix of want a bargain and needs a bargain. And the brands are critically important to her and to him. And she enjoys the treasure hunt, which is really what Ross is about. The treasure hunt format is, there's only 1 to 2 of an item in a store, so you got to pick it up because, you circle the store, or you come back tomorrow, it's not going to be there. So we've definitely trained our customer to really value that treasure hunt and to get that item and put it in her cart as soon as she sees it. Our best customer comes in 2 to 3 times per month, actually, which is amazing. Our DNA is in our name. The for less, Ross Dress for Less. Since 1982, we've been focused on first quality, in-season, name brand, and designer apparel, accessories, footwear, and beauty and home fashions. We offer some great bargains, high quality products for less, 20 to 80% off, department store and specialty store retails. And then there's just a quick slide of some beauty product that I'm currently buying. And when we are searching for products, we are searching high and low for the best brands and the latest styles to offer our customers. We work directly with manufacturers and vendors, primarily to negotiate the best deals, so we could pass that on to our customer so that she's getting the best value as possible. We love getting new buys for our stores, and we love doing it quick as possible because, like I said, our best customer, she's in there 2 to 3 times a month. So every time she comes in, she wants to see something new and something exciting, and we want to give that to her. So the quicker we get the goods to stores, the quicker that translates to sales at the register.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to take a question from our Q&A from our audience, actually, and that is, which season is your favorite to buy? Oh, that's such a good question. Do you have a favorite season to buy?
I can speak to that. My favorite season is holiday or, Q4. I love the gifting season. I love buying, especially given my brand lens, I love buying, pave and rhinestones and fun holiday dressing. I think it's usually a smaller season, actually. You're buying a lot of inventory, a lot of depth, but you're not actually buying that many SKUs because, it is, a smaller season, and a smaller, gifting period is November to December, and that's, and Black Friday. But that's probably my favorite season is holiday.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably piggyback off of what Lauren said. As buyers, usually we get the most amount of money in that quarter as well. So more product to work with, more choices to assort. So by that kind of standard alone, you get more to work with and more to kind of like shop around with your dollars. North Face, that is our busiest quarter. We're kind of known as an outerwear company. When I was working with BCBG, my favorite would have been like Q2, like going into spring and summer, where we were more known for dresses and some of those kind of like outfitting event type occasions. So kind of just depends on the company.
Mm-hmm.
We absolutely love holiday as buyers for sure. So everything that Lauren and Matt said, we are really excited about holiday this year at Ross because we feel like the customer is going to be out shopping and is going to be wanting to celebrate. And that, part of celebration is buying gifts for yourself and for other people. So I think it's going to be a really great holiday season coming out of the pandemic. And I get really excited for all events, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. We do a little collection for every important event in the calendar. So it just keeps it exciting and fresh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, nice. All right, so 3 holidays. To give our audience a little idea of how much we do this in advance, when do y'all buy holiday? What month?
So right now I'm buying holiday for fall 22, which I guess we're about a year and a half out from that.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that's been the standard at most of my companies, at least a year.
Mm-hmm.
I bought holiday in April, actually, so I'm a little ahead. We have a little bit of a different market calendar at Tory, and also different than my past brand. So I'm actually going to buy spring, summer in 2 weeks or next week. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve, but I still stand by holiday as my favorite collection to buy.
Absolutely, same. We start, as soon as you get out of holiday, you're recapping for next holiday, like, what worked, what didn't work. So we start working on it in January and we try to finalize everything April, May, make sure we get it in time and in stores for holiday. So you want to stay ahead of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Here's another audience question that's kind of related to holiday because holiday happens in winter. Do you ever find it hard to buy for winter considering the unusual winter weather in certain areas of California or the US or for Matt, Canada? How does the weather come into play if not everywhere is, I guess, cold?
So from my perspective, I've usually always have bought for US and obviously a ton of climates across the country. Mm-hmm. For most of the companies that I've worked at, it's when you are sorting your buy, there's kind of different tiers, not only by like the store size, but how much profit it pushes. And then like an additional layer underneath that, you have climates to take into. So you're kind of having to factor in these 2 different situations, like how much money can you fit here or can you push into this store? What's the square footage of it? How many CDs or SKUs can you put in there? And then also the climate effect. You obviously don't want to send parkas down to Miami in the middle of July, but for Canada, I am still selling outerwear for people going back to school prep or just for going further up north, I guess, which is kind of crazy to me to think that we would still sell insulated outerwear at that point, but it's literally different for every region.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's all about knowing your customer and then knowing your store, your specific store, right? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go back to audience questions in a little bit, but I kind of want to move on to our next portion of our conversation. So we talked about the art of buying, but now let's talk about the science of buying because, buying is such a unique career path where you're really, really using both sides of the brain. And, it's right brain, left brain. You've got to know, what we just talked about, which is you've got to know your customer, you got to know trends, you got to know colors, silhouettes, and all of that stuff. But you also have to know like your business, right? And analytics and all those good things. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you integrate quantitative and analytical skills into your buying process? Who wants to take this first one?
I could take it.
Yeah.
For us, we are reviewing our sales down to the item and the color and the print on a daily basis. It is like a, you know, like you eat your breakfast, you review your sales. Like it's a daily activity for us. Placing reorders also depends on our sales history. So you want to make sure you're understanding what is she liking, what is she not liking. You have to do that analytical part of the business. You can't just buy without understanding any history unless it's a brand new item. And, you know, there's aren't too many new things in the world. Everything, you know, to Lauren's point, came from something, you know, some previous trend. But we really rely on our customer sales and reading all of our fun reports. Like Monday is like, I like to say Monday is like our recap day. Like what happened the last week, you know, you come in. I remember being a baby buyer and like seeing the first item that I helped my buyer design and seeing sales on it was so exciting, you know, that first Monday. So, and I still get that thrill of seeing what the customer is buying that I'm putting out there for her and for him as well. So that sales data can also help us figure out what's the next trend too. So that's why the, you know, being analytical is very important and is a huge part of the job.
Mhm.
Yeah, Sakina's point, it's very gratifying to go in on Monday and look at the selling reports, which you pretty much
And
get.
a little sad, right, too, Matt, when they don't like it.
They're not all winners. There's definitely some
I
know. But to also get onto the question, it's definitely a half and half. There's obviously the fun part that we kind of talked about, analyzing the trends. And when you go to a vendor meeting or you're meeting with the design team to look at the line, you kind of already have an idea trend-wise, what you like, what you don't like, what your customer is going to respond to. But how you base that buy is almost exclusively off of past history, trends, what was working, what didn't work. So right now, as I'm doing my fall 22 buy, fall winter, I will look at what my past product did for the whole entire season, what that sell-through rate was, how the margin was for us, was it beneficial, and judging if there was a direct comp, moving that bar a little bit higher if we feel like we can do a little bit more and has a little bit more length of life to it. If there's not a direct comp, looking for something similar that we feel like the customer would react to. And same thing for the stuff that isn't working so well, looking to see what has slow sell-throughs and applying that to the stuff that's in the line or what you're working with your vendor with right now, and making sure either one, you don't do it, or you do it to a very small cluster of stores if it's a really special item, but it won't sell. So it's kind of just taking both into account, the fun fashion trend part that everyone loves, but also the Excel and number aspect of it too.
Mhm. Oh, Microsoft Excel is my love language.
Every single day, every day.
Lauren.
Yeah, so, you know, everything that Sakinah and Matt said, it's really, you know, it's very easy to say, you know, oh, I like this, I want to pick it up, I think, you know, I think it'll sell. That, you know, that's an opinion, right? I mean, of course, you know, after years of being in this function, you may have a gut instinct of what will do well, what will sell, and what won't. But it's really, you know, backing that up with concrete evidence. And, you know, being a buyer, they give you a budget and they say, hey, this is the money that, you know, you get to play with, get to buy with, and, you know, you're accountable for that. So at the end of the day, you need the numbers, the analytics to kind of, you know, back you up. Because you're accountable for a business. You're in a way, you're what I like to call an intrapreneur. You know, you're running your own small business within a company, whether it be, you know, the jewelry category, you know, the Canadian stores or the beauty category. You know, you're kind of running your own little business. So, you know, it always has to go back to the numbers and the concrete data. And of course, you know, we utilize programs like Excel, and, you know, depending on which company or which brand or which stores you buy for, you know, they'll have their own other internal kind of programs to give you sales data and sales history. But it's really kind of marrying the two, understanding product, understanding the trend, and, you know, through the lens of your brand, but also, you know, having the numbers to kind of back you up. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't sell, they're going to ask you why, and, you know, what did you look at to you know, make that decision.
Yeah. So here's an audience question that really relates to what you just touched on. And the question is, when thinking about buying, how do you know if you are getting that you're getting your money's worth? That what you're spending, you're getting your money's worth?
If I'm understanding it correctly, I think that just kind of goes back to when you're looking at your selling sheet on Monday morning. I mean, that entire day is dedicated to looking to see what is working and what's not working, and what other way is there really to tell other than the customer voting with their money and deciding what they're going to decide to buy.
Yeah, good point. Okay, very nice. Okay, so next question. We talked about Microsoft Excel, which we all love, but what other new technologies do you see being introduced into the field of buying? Is there anything kind of like new that people are using, or you know, is it still very, very Excel heavy? What are y'all seeing out there?
It's definitely Excel, Excel, Excel. I mean, I remember when I first started 16 years ago, I was writing purchase orders to vendors on handwritten on carbon copy POs. And you gave one copy to them, one copy to the data entry. You kept one copy for your records, you know? So it's definitely has changed for us. We, you know, all of our POs are electronic and we email them, we EDI them, you know? So I think that's been, to me, like the biggest shift in terms of what things have gone electronic. Obviously, we have all of our systems that have changed over the course of the time that I've been at Ross that have just gotten more advanced, and you can drill down into like the size of something in some categories of what's selling. So I think having that, you know, all that data and all of that information at your fingertips just helps you analyze the business even better.
Yeah.
I feel like it's our job as buyers and merchandisers to really give the reality of the situation. And every company I've worked at has had super archaic systems where you're like working with that black and blue screen from the 90s. For whatever reason, it's just kind of a consistent thing in the retail industry. There are improvements though. I would say, at least from my perspective, the selling analysis in terms of the sheets, usually everything is always broken out onto Excel, but the way that you can pivot the data and look at it in a granular level is really improving. And then the other area, which is one of the main topics that we're talking about, is digital. Most of the improvements are going towards online. Specifically, we're updating our programs to where we can filter. If you click on like outerwear and then go into shells, you can filter it and have it displayed in rows to however you really want it to do. You can have it directly by what's working the best. If there's like a holiday going on, you can have it going up that way, or best sellers. There's just a whole bunch of configurations that you can do now that you just didn't have the option to do before. Whereas a very just like post it, very hard to move around things, have things on multiple pages, which seems like it should be a pretty standard thing, but in a lot of cases hasn't been. So I would say at least from my perspective, all the new tech has really been shoveled into the e-com merchandising kind of platform.
I agree that the platforms and the systems have come a long way over the years, you know. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I would say I'm also heavily, you know, lean on Excel, and nothing too groundbreaking in terms of new programs that I'm using to analyze the business. But I would say the biggest, you know, change in the last few years for me is it's kind of a buzzword in the industry, but, you know, the idea of omni, meaning that the customer is shopping both in store and online. You know, she's utilizing social media, and kind of as from a buying perspective, like how can we, you know, make our inventory more efficient by, you know, having the store network and then our e-com site like speak to each other, and how do we share inventory and, you know, buy, you know, better, maybe a little bit less, you know, and kind of share inventory just within one brand. so much so that, you know, in my role, I actually was hired at Tory as the retail buyer, and then combined the web buying team and the retail buying team into one, and we became an omni team. So now I'm looking at both, you know, the buying for both the e-com and the retail stores, and, you know, it's a similar customer. There's learnings from both, and just again, in my buying, like, how am I, oh, wow, this did really well online. You know, maybe we can test it in stores, or, you know, now our company as a whole is investing in technologies to ship from store, or if it's sold out online, you know, find in store, and, you know, efficiencies like that of really, you know, speaking to both channels, and really making a seamless experience for the customer. For me, that's been the biggest change in the last few years in terms of like the buying world, but not necessarily on, you know, programs that I'm using every day to analyze the business.
Yeah. Omni, is such a buzzword that we keep hearing about, right? That seamless between online, in-store, and all of that. Okay, so here is I love this audience question, but I'm actually going to answer it. So the question is, what are your tips for someone who isn't as proficient in Excel? Because we've all been talking about it for so long. Any videos that you could recommend? So I'm actually going to answer this question. So there's lots of different resources out there. If you do want to kind of brush up on your Excel skills, there's obviously like YouTube videos, there's LinkedIn Learning, you know, textbooks and things like that. If you want to brush up on Excel, here at FIDM, we do teach Excel as well, but we teach Excel specifically for being in our industry, the retail industry. So we have 2 classes, an intro and advanced, and they're specifically for if you want to be a buyer, if you want to be a planner, if you want to, you know, work in marketing and stuff like that. So great question. Okay, so wow, time is just flying by. So I think we should go ahead and move on to our very last topic of the day, which is for those of us who, and those in the audience who want to become a buyer. How does someone become a buyer? How did y'all become buyers? Who wants to go first?
I can take this.
Okay,
I would say, you know, there's 3 ways, but I would say the first is education. You know, I went to school for this, I have a degree in this, and now I'm actually an instructor teaching this. So, you know, there's, you know, tailored programs like here at FIDM, like that will literally teach you almost everything you need to know to be fully functional and efficient in this specific job. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And then, you know, the other, you know, supplements are, you know, hands-on experience, which, you know, that never hurts. Interning, working actually at a retail store, where this is a retail industry, you know, business. So getting that sales floor experience, and then, you know, also connecting with people and I mean, watching this webinar is step 1, I would say.
Yeah.
Those are good points. To kind of just tag on to that, I think for personal experience, working at the store definitely gave me a good insight to where it's you can buy for a different company, but it's a good perspective to have, to know what that sales associate and what that customer interaction kind of looks like from that standpoint. Education for sure. It seems like anywhere you go for buying, it's a bachelor's, that's pretty much required. And the classes at FIDM, having graduated from FIDM, I can definitely say they were very applicable. While buying math was probably my least favorite class, it was the most applicable to what we do in this actual job, because it is literally a 24/7 math related job, which is funny because it was my worst subject in high school. So anyone who is not a math lover, you can still do this and rock it and have fun with it. But to Lauren's point, internships, jobs, webinars, those are really the keys to getting into the door. Most companies that are hiring for assistant buyers don't require actual buying experience, but having that store experience, internships, is usually what sets apart the other assistant buyers who don't have any of that. And that's usually enough to get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and Excel. And Excel. Anytime I've had an assistant buyer who tells me that they know Excel, they can work a pivot table, like they automatically move up to like the first or second one for me, because that is such a huge thing for us. So really, really do take a program in that if you're not familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. And Sakinah, you went to school for buying as well, right?
Exactly. I'm echoing a lot of what Lauren and Matthew said. I did go to school for buying also, and started out as a assistant buyer at Macy's.com, and then I moved over to Ross and worked my way through the company. So I think not a lot of people, I think in the past used to go to school for being a buyer, but I think that's definitely become more of a trend. And even when I was in school, the best classes that I had were the ones that were taught by some of the professionals who just came from, closing a buy with a vendor, or, just put together a big deal and, came straight to class to teach us and tell us about it. So I'm happy to be able to, share my experiences with my students as well, now that I'm teaching here at FIDM too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, I want to ask our two instructors, Lauren and Sakinah, because you're actually both buying instructors here. What are some of the things that you're teaching in the classroom that is helping prepare the future buyers of the world?
Definitely underscoring the math skills, like Matthew pointed out, is important to you don't need to memorize the calculations, you need to understand how to do them. I think taking the fear out of math has helped my students since I started working with them for a couple semesters now, like understand like it's scary, but let's break it down into like little bits and pieces. And, you don't have to memorize everything, especially not right now, use your calculator, really think through it. And then I kind of relate it to your own money. You have $100, you buy 50, you only have 50 left, like that's your open to buy. You have $100 open to buy, kind of relating it to real life, I think has helped them understand that portion of being a buyer. And I just really giving them some real life experiences too, I think makes them excited because they can read the book, but I can tell you what really happened. So I think they like that and having that piece of it as well.
That insider info.
Yeah, I mean, again, to just piggyback, but it all rings true off of what Sakinah said. Again, my course that I've taught is, we're working live in Excel. So again, hands-on experience with this program that's so important to us. And we're pretty much giving like a scenario of this is what your business did, and this is what we're projecting the business to do and in the future, and what does this mean, and honestly understanding how to analyze a business and make decisions, and be confident with a program and with numbers. It's not about math, it's just about understanding what these numbers mean, and really getting comfortable with also just being again, like an owner, an entrepreneur. This is my brand, this is my business. And, at the end of the course, you put together an oral presentation, and you're acting as the buyer, and you're defending your decisions, and, you're explaining how you got there. So it's really kind of, full, cycle of, an almost real life scenario of a day in the life, or a few months in the life as a buyer.
Yeah,
absolutely. And real quick, I want to touch on in the class, I talk a lot about vendor relationships, because that is a huge part of being a buyer, especially in my channel of business. Is really making sure your vendors are your number one fans, they're on your team, because especially in off-price, you want to be able to be the first person they call with a great deal, with a great closeout, with a great opportunity, or here's the next new trend. You need to get after that, and being close to your vendors and keeping up with them is something that I was told when I first started many years ago. Make your vendor your best friend, and your job will be a lot easier. It's not going to be fun all the time, because vendors come with their own challenges, but it's gonna make it easier if you have partners on both sides.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, on behalf of the college is so lucky to have you too in our family, and so are the students. Your students are so lucky to have you as their instructors. All right, let's turn it over to the Q&A. I had so many questions, so I'm going to get to as many as possible. The first question, I think I'm going to answer this one. Are there any particular bloggers, channels, and books to recommend? So I'm actually going to recommend 2 journalists for the person who asked this question. And the 2 journalists, fashion critics actually, that I highly recommend is Vanessa Friedman from the New York Times, and also Robin Givhan. She's the Pulitzer Prize winning critic at the Washington Post. So if you really want to start learning and reading about fashion on a sophisticated intellectual level, that is where I would start. So so those 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's see who else has the question. What influenced your choice into choosing what store you are currently buying for? So is there a particular reason you ended up at the company that you're at now?
I can
Lauren,
answer
yes.
that quickly. So previous to Tory Burch, as Mimi mentioned before, you know, I was at European luxury brands, and, you know, it is a little bit different being a buyer at a brand that's, you know, headquartered in a different continent. You know, of course, you're buying through the lens of your customer here in North America, but all of the creative functions, the design team, some of the, you know, customer relationship teams, marketing, that's all, you know, across the way in a different continent. So you're not really working at a headquarters, and that, you know, that's fun, but it also comes with its own challenges. And for me, I really wanted to, you know, work at an American brand. That was important to me to you know, work at a headquarters in an American brand. So that's for me what made me decide to you know, start a buying career at Tory Burch. But
great answer. Okay, so I'm going to give Sakinah the next question, which is, would you say different areas, I guess like different departments or different stores have, different stores have different sales, and does that sometimes reflect on what merchandise goes to what store?
We do have a sophisticated allocation system.
Mm-hmm.
In every store, we have over 1,600 stores just in the Ross branch of our, you know, we have Ross and we have our sister company, Didi's. And every store has its own sales plan, and we allocate all the way down to the category and sometimes even below in other UDAs to make sure that the product is going to the right stores who need it. Because if you're pushing product into a store who, let's say, didn't sell all of that beauty blender, then they don't need any more beauty blenders. But then, you know, the store across from the Grove sold out of theirs in a week, so they need more. So I think our allocation system is pretty amazing, and that is directing the inventory into the right channel so that we can maximize our sales.
Okay, great answer. Okay, I'm going to give Matt this next question. What would you say were some difficulties in your buying career, and how have you overcome them?
I think starting out, I think learning to be okay with large presentations, large groups, presenting in front of like very important people. Oftentimes for the Monday selling reports, you are putting together a presentation of your area, what was working, what was not working, in like a very formal template that the company assigns, and then you are then presenting out. And I think initially that was like a little jarring and scary to me, being this like new fashion student trying to present to all of these executives what product was working. But I think with time, that got to be easier and easier. The more that you get involved into the product that you're working with, the more that you look at your selling sheets, the more everything just kind of comes naturally. If someone asks you a question, you kind of just like, this is what's working, this is what's not working. You kind of just can spit it out. You don't need to reference your sheets or anything. I say that was probably initially one of the things for me.
Okay, great answer. Okay, so okay, I'm going to do 2 more questions. Lauren, get this next question because it's the question is: do buyers forecast the future trend by the high-end designers fashion or the current trend?
You know, I would say both. You know, it's depending on what brand you're at, and you know, you're looking up, you're looking at the aspirational brands. You know, what they're, you know, what trends they're doing. But then, you know, again, I spoke about it before, but filtering, and you're the expert of your brand and your business and your category, so you have to know where in the trend are we? Where in the cycle of the trend is that, you know, too fashion forward for our customer? Is she ready for it? Are we past that? Is that like, you know, I don't know, the new word chuggy, is that chuggy, you know, for our customer? Is that, you know, it's up to you as the expert of, you know, of product and of the sales data for you to, you know, you're looking up and you're looking, you know, on the street and on social media, what people are wearing, but it's up to you to determine where, you know, your customer is in that trend.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we have time for one more question, and this is such a good one to end on. So this is going to be for everyone, okay? Why did you choose to be a buyer? What brought you here?
I guess I'll go ahead and start that. So when I initially started FIDM, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no clue. I knew I wanted to work in retail, fashion, but to be honest, I really didn't even know what a buyer really did when I started. And it wasn't until I started doing internships and interning with an actual buyer to see like, this is what they're actually doing. And I actually started out in marketing. My degree was in merchandise marketing. So I started out in an internship with marketing and realized I didn't like that, which made me nervous because my degree was in that. Took another internship that was in buying, was like, this feels right. This looks good. Overcome the math part of it, which was like, oh, the only thing that was off-putting to me, but realized like very, very small part of the equation that you can easily overcome if you're not really great with that. But at the end of the day, it's a fun job. We basically get to shop for a living. You spend the company's money, which is fantastic. You are responsible for that money and you are held to account for that money. But at the end of the day, it's a great job because in and of itself, you're working with clothes, you're working with product. And that's a pretty good job in my eyes.
Yeah, love it. All right. And Sakinah, is there a particular reason you became a buyer?
Oh boy, when I was little, my mom used to actually have her own sewing company. And I think that's where my interest and love of fashion started. And I knew, okay, I can't sew, but I'm still interested in fashion. What other, you know, avenues can I get into to have a career here? And then in high school, they actually, you know, when the colleges come on campus, they told me about buying, and I was just intrigued and in love. And there was a point along my path where I was like, I don't know if I want to be in buying or I want to be in planning. And then, because I also had an interest in wanting to be a math teacher at one point. And then I went to an internship at a company as a planner, and I was like, this is not for me. It was too much math, you know? So then, you know, I went and did an internship in buying, and I absolutely loved it and ended up working at that company. And then, you know, now I've been here 16 years, and it's one of the best challenging, fun, and rewarding jobs to be a buyer and to also mentor other associates and coworkers who, you know, want to be buyers one day it's great. And, you know, the teaching part has been amazing as well. To, you know, supplement that mentorship too.
All right, Lauren, close us out.
Similar to Sakinah, it was something maybe like that started when I was younger in high school. Probably even before that, I was always very particular about what I was wearing, what I wanted to wear. I love the idea of, you know, I love that fashion is a way of expressing yourself. And I always felt like, you know, I could be my true self with what I wore. So that was the initial kind of connection to this industry and this job. Was always reading magazines and, you know, seeking, you know, fashion out. And then really, and then I started working in high school at, you know, in a retail store at a boutique. And, you know, that was my first taste of the actual retail industry. And then from there, I really just sought out, you know, any way possible to be in this industry. I took high school classes at FIT. They actually had a high school program. I sought out an education for this career. Interning, you know, I was hungry for it. And it's really just about, you know, it's all from a passion of product and just loving, you know, fashion as a way of expressing oneself. And also, you know, to the point where I wasn't, you know, I'm not a designer. I'm not fully right brain creative, fully left brain, you know, mathematic. And this was a really good blend of, you know, those skills in terms of, you know, a buying career.
Yeah, perfect. And hence why today is called the art and the science of fashion buying. Thank you all to my panelists, Lauren, Sakinah, and Matt. That's all the time we have for today. And thank you all for tuning in to FIDM's online lecture series. We have a few other upcoming events here at the college. Next Thursday, on July 22nd at 3 p.m. Pacific time, I will be hosting another episode of Office Hour with my colleague, the Emmy Award-winning Tom Henkenius, live on Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces. As usual, we're going to be chatting about the prior week's trending topics in fashion, business, marketing, Gen Z, and so much more. To tune in, just make sure you're following FIDM and Clubhouse on FIDM on Clubhouse and on Twitter. And then we also have our virtual open house coming up on Saturday, July 31st from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. And head over to fidm.edu for more information and to register. Thank you everyone again for coming. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.